up, you guys? Welcome back to the Capitalize podcast, where we help investors build wealth in real estate. I'm your host, Grant Smith. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Sharper Capital Partners, our private lending company based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. To learn more about how we help investors scale their real estate portfolios with hard money, you can visit us at sharpercapitalpartners.com. All right, on today's episode, I'm super excited to welcome Kurt and Elizabeth Phillips. Kurt and Elizabeth are full-time real estate investors in the Central Ohio market, and they coach other investors coast to coast as well. Kurt and Elizabeth got their start by living in a 100-year-old duplex temporarily, as they say in quotes, for 9 years. When they couldn't sell that duplex, they decided to buy a few more, to the point where Kurt was able to leave his high-paying job to pursue real estate full-time. Today, Kurt and Elizabeth work together in their portfolio of 40-plus stores while co-homeschooling their 6 children. So without further ado, let's welcome Kurt and Elizabeth. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Grant. Appreciate it, man. Excited to be on here.
All right. So let's talk about, how you guys, we'll get into how you guys got started here in a second, but let's start off talking about, what your current focus is personally and professionally, and what the day-to-day looks like.
So we're focused on, this is a whole big topic. We're focused on growth and focused on buying small multifamily. But for our day, I know that that's one of the things that probably we get asked about the most, is doing this as a team and doing it with 6 kids. Because immediately when you say we have 6 children, it doesn't matter who it is. They're like, wow, you have 6 children. They were like, yeah, we run our real estate business together too. Wow, you run a business together too. So it's kind of funny to see those dynamics together. But for us, we always try to start off as a family and end as a family when it comes to our days. So as you know, in real estate, things can get crazy. We just had an issue that pretty much, it took up most of our days trying to solve this major obstacle, but we still wanted to start off as a family. So we do breakfast together, and then the day gets going. And if we can, we do lunch together. That doesn't happen every day, but we try and bookend it, right? We try and bookend it, and then we try and keep Elizabeth so that in the mornings, she's mostly homeschooling. It doesn't always go as planned, but that's the goal. I try and be out in the field doing the things that I enjoy doing, managing contractors and projects and mining for deals and making offers and all those things that we know that real estate is. And we try and keep her home as much as we can. Yeah. Basically.
So we run our business not in spite of our children, but alongside with them. So what he's talking about, we have morning announcements and we have our team meeting. First thing in the morning, everybody knows what they're going to do. So people always ask us, what's the spread of kids? Like, we have 18 all the way down to 6. Yes, they're all ours. No, we didn't steal any. Yes, we...
1 girl, 5 boys.
Yeah, 1 girl, 5 boys. And so when he says, most of the time, it does get a little crazy with 5 boys. And we integrate what we do in business, our children know. And so when we talk about geometry, then they go on site and they're pouring concrete, or, we're talking about algebra and they're helping with bookkeeping. So it's very much intertwined so that they're getting real life skills. And so that they can learn whether they do real estate in the future or not is totally fine. But they're at least going to have those skills moving forward. So that's kind of what it looks like day to day. I do stay home in the morning. I run the books. I do the CFO kind of things. And then sometimes we're also on site. I'll bring the kids and we do little things that they can do. Like, we stage our units. We're in a staged finished unit in a 4-plex right now. And our kids help do this, and we give them autonomy to make some of those small decisions, and they're very opinionated. So it's a great dynamic.
We try to cast a vision for our family. So, I think that's probably the key to how we make it work, is we try to cast a vision that we do this as a family, that we are making impact in our city. It's a smaller city, 45,000, 48,000 people. And we're really trying to make a difference here in the way that we do our rentals and we manage our rentals and the quality of work that we do. And we really try and incorporate them in that vision as much as we can, so that homeschooling looks a lot like what we do for a living. They're very intertwined.
Yeah. Lifelong learning. And we, like you said, we cast the vision so our kids know what we're working towards, that we're on the same side of the table with our contractors, with our residents. We don't call them tenants, we call them residents, because they work together with us. We buy historic homes, and we'll probably get into that a little bit more of how we do that. But does that answer your question?
Yes, I think that paints a very good picture for our listeners who, they go, oh, I want to get into investing, but, my spouse might not be on board, or I want to get into investing, but I also want a family life and I want to balance all those things. And, you kind of painted a picture of, okay, this is what it looks like. Okay. When you have a significant real estate portfolio and you have, a big family. So before we go into all the details that, you guys have probably honed skills to get to where you are now, obviously, let's go ahead and back up and say, okay, let's put a pin in where you would say your real estate interest or investment journey started. Where would you guys say that began?
So there's probably two different spots.
Yeah.
Our interest in it actually came from our pastor, who, when we first got married, said, man, one of the things that he and his wife did is we bought a duplex and we lived in half of it. And he's like, you guys should do that too.
Like, okay.
And so we did. We thought, well, he's pretty wise old sage, so we did. So we bought our duplex, and I actually sold, I had a 1971 Nova with a 350 engine in it.
They didn't ask him to
beautiful mint condition. I sold it for the down payment.
It wasn't my idea.
She did not force me to do it for all you guys out there. I actually did it on my own free will. But anyway, so we moved into that. The part that we moved into was a total disaster. I had no idea what I was doing. I did all the work myself. Again, I didn't know what I was doing.
We had just gotten married.
Didn't have any kids at that time.
Yeah.
But anyway, we began, the person next door was paying rent. And when we really got into it, and we were terrible at it. They'd say, hey, we can't pay rent this month. We'd be like, that's okay. Maybe next month you can catch.
Did we even have a lease?
I mean, it was awful. We were so bad. But we stuck with it. And when we were collecting rent, we entered into an early season of our life when we had our little girl, then we had our little boy, and we didn't have to have a house payment. Like, we had no house payment, and because it covered that. It covered the house payment, covered the mortgage, the taxes, and we might have had a few bucks left over after rent was paid. And so for us, that was when the interest, because we're like, wow, this is powerful. It enabled us to have a lot of options that we didn't think we would have.
And when people were losing their homes in 08 and 09 around us, colleagues or whatever, and I left my corporate job and we looked around and we're like, what's happening? We had no idea, what had transpired, because we were so grateful. We still had our house payment was covered. And so, so that's where the interest had come from.
And then we really got involved in real estate in 2014, I guess it would be. 2013, 2014, around there, where we really started to get our financial legs underneath of us. Now, we didn't know any other way than the traditional put 20% down and the bank gives you the 80%. And so we bought 2 duplexes in 2013, 2014 area. And then that started to really get us going. And why we did that, I don't even know. I could tell you, Grant, the second duplex that we bought in 2013, 2014, she didn't walk through. She never saw it. And I ran no numbers on it at all. None. I literally walked through this thing and I'm like, this seems pretty good. Yeah. And so we bought it.
Don't do it. Don't do it that way.
No, it worked out, but.
Oh, it's one of our best properties.
So that got us, I guess, started. And then, from there, we've kind of taken off from there taken off is a relative term, but we've grown as fast as we want to grow.
Right.
Well, and there's so much to unpack there, right? I think, one of the big things I'm thinking about early on in that journey is it just began with a recommendation from, someone who obviously is your pastor, and you guys kind of took it and ran with it. Talk about like some of the early hurdles that you have. Like you said, you might not have had, leases in place. You didn't necessarily know like whether or not, you were giving passes on tenants when they weren't paying for rent. Where were you going to get all that information that you needed to, make a decision on like, okay, this is how I need to manage my asset?
So that's a great point. This was in the days before Bigger Pockets. The internet was barely invented. We're that old. But no, it was. But what happened was we had a mentor. We had a couple mentors, right? And one of them had been a housing provider, landlord. We call them housing providers for many years, and he lived 2 doors down. So he got us the lease. He taught us how to screen residents, how to train them. So from that basis, he came over, he helped us with repairs. He was amazing. And we also had at least 2 other mentors in that time that really just took us under their wing and said, this is how to have executive presence and how to conduct integrity-filled business. So that was invaluable, I think, for our journey.
That was really it. I mean, we didn't have a lease and he just gave us his lease. He's like, I think he felt bad for us. Really, we were so bad. I mean, literally, not to get off track here, but just to give your listeners some kind of picture of how bad we were and how it's okay to be bad at first and learn a little, to surround yourself with quality people.
Yeah.
We actually had a couple moved in, and this guy was like, he worked out. And he was this massive guy, massive. I mean, like he was busting out of his shirt, right? And you can kind of see me, and I'm not, and I wasn't then either. But anyway, so they just didn't pay rent. What?
This is a funny story, but
so they didn't pay rent, and I'm like, hey man, we need rent, whatever. And he's like, I'll get to it. And so finally one day I'm like, I've had it. Like I got to go over and really give this guy a strong arm of the law here, and he needs to pay rent. And I don't know what he was thinking, but I knocked on his door, and literally he walks up to the back door in his tighty whities underwear. That's it. And he just walks up to the door. I'm like, hey, you should probably pay rent. And he's like, I'll get on that. And I'm like, okay, thanks. And I walked away. It was like this super awkward scenario. I'm like,
they trashed the place. They owed us money. I mean, like, not terrible.
But we learned a ton from that experience, a ton, and we're much better now.
Oh my goodness, so bad.
So when it came to identifying mentors that could help you scale your business, how did you go about finding people who, could coach you in the right direction? And then in the other sense, how did you be someone that was coachable or someone that mentors wanted to help?
So back then, like I said, I think that we just didn't know anything, and that gentleman felt bad for us and really helped us out. We didn't know what we didn't know. Fast forwarding, we actually hired a coach when we really wanted to grow and really wanted to scale to a certain point. We hired a coach that we met, we vetted, we got on a call with him. We had a long conversation about what kind of style he was, what kind of invested he did, what kind of vision he had. We had to align on a lot of things, not just in real estate strategy, right? Which we don't actually do the exact same strategy that he does, but more of a vision. If we have a conflict of vision about how he's doing and conducting his business compared to what our vision was, it really wasn't going to work. But fortunately, we found a coach through a meetup. It was actually through a large conference, and we coached him for almost a year. And for us, that made the biggest difference because our eyes were, we just couldn't even believe some of the things that we just didn't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. And I think in order to be a good coach, you need to also be coachable. And in that time, we were doing some financial coaching, but obviously had nothing to do with real estate. And so for us, it was easy to be coachable because we recognized that he was at a level that we wanted to be, and we weren't there yet. So obviously I don't know what he knows because I'm not where he is, if that makes sense.
And just to give you some context, like he said, we had done financial coaching. So we had another side business. My background in the corporate world was in insurance and taxes and business startup. And Kurt was an amazing student of getting personal finances in order. So we would sit down with couples that wanted to start a business and go through and help them launch their businesses. And so we were doing financial coaching. All the while we had just a few rentals on the side. I think we had 6, maybe at the time. And we worked with a larger publishing company that provided the materials for financial coaching. So to give some context, we knew how to be good students because we saw the good and the not so good students that we were working with. and to be able to take notes, to take action. If our coach had said to do something, we did it and we came back the next week and said, okay, what's next? So biggest thing is being coachable and taking action. But also, I think part of our success was really vetting our coach and our mentors. And we still have mentors because there are a lot of sharks out there. And unfortunately, we've seen that because now we do coach real estate. And so unfortunately, we do see the bad side of people that propose that they are successful in real estate and they're really not. So that's something just to be aware of and to be wise and discerning about who you listen to.
Genuinely curious, any advice for someone who is seeking coaching? Obviously, you guys are probably a resource at this point in the coaching space, but when it comes to vetting a coach, because I think a lot of people, myself included, would benefit from more coaching, more mentorship, but going about it in a way where, you hear so many bad stories that you start to think that, that is the rule and not the exception. So any advice for someone to vet their coach when they're looking to make, a purchase like that?
Oh, I'm so excited you asked that question.
Go ahead. You jump on it first. Yeah.
That's
a great question.
We get asked this a lot. We don't coach everyone. In fact, we refer more than what we take because we are intentional about our family and our portfolio. So we do refer people when we say, this is what we say. You need to research more than just their marketing material online. You can find out how much they own, where their LLC is based, see if there is any action against them legally. You can search court records. You can do county auditor website and talk to alumni. And whenever somebody comes to us and says, I want to coach with you, we always want to see, do they have a good reason? So before you seek coaching, be really clear about your vision. And do you have a reason? And is it a really good reason to be pursuing real estate? Is your heart in the right place? And then seek somebody who has that same heart and talk to alumni students. If you can't talk to alumni, like not current students, people who have graduated and moved on, what kind of results do they have? And have those conversations. We actually we have amazing alumni. They become like family to us. And so we have permission from them to provide cell phone number, website, email address of our alumni. And we say, listen, go talk to our alumni. We're not for everyone. And we want it to be a good fit because we want people to have an amazing transformation in their business when they work with us. And so part of that is on our students' end to research us ahead of time. So make sure that their claims are real. How many do they own? We own 41 right here today. And we're very clear about our, how we run our business is integrity filled. And that's what we teach. So that's what we tell the students that are looking to coach or looking for a coach. We only coach what we know. We coach long-term rentals, and we've done flipping, we've done wholesaling, but our main focus right now is long-term rentals. So we only coach what we teach.
Yeah, and I think one of the quick litmus tests is when you're on a phone call with that mentor or coach is, there should be mutual, that you should be interviewing each other. And so often we see just coaches just receiving anyone when we really, I don't want to say interview is probably not the right word, but I can't think of another word, but we really are vetting them to make sure we're going to be a good fit for them. Because like Elizabeth said, we're not always. And we can acknowledge that because our primary business is our real estate. We just love teaching. We just enjoy it. We run our local meetup for free. We do coaching, which is not free, but we do our coaching, but we enjoy it and we love it. And we have lifelong relationships with those that we've coached. And so, we're going to vet them too, to make sure it's going to be a good fit for both sides. And I think that's really important that a lot of coaches don't do.
There are so many good nuggets there. So many. The things that are jumping out to me at this point, just to recap a few of them, because I don't want to lose the topics or the ideas that are kind of being instilled here. And it's something I've had to come to terms with myself. And I think a lot of listeners will too. When you guys first started investing in real estate, you just got started, right? I mean, you got into it, you learned along the way, and you kept taking the steps forward. And not only that, but you kind of had a vision or a goal in mind. And that's the next point I'm going to hit on here. And that is, you talked about in your background that I read about making that transition from, either you were both working or one of you was working to being able to, go full time with your real estate portfolio and move forward. I'm curious about, how you're able to manage building up your portfolio while still working, multiple jobs or a job. And then in addition to that, how is it that you were able to identify at what point you were able to cross over and say, hey, I can live off of, the income that my portfolio is generating for me?
Yeah, that's really good. So the first part of the question, as far as working full time. So Elizabeth came home. It was one of our core values that, we agreed to before we had children, that Elizabeth was going to come home to be a full-time homeschooling, for the kids when we started to have kids. And so that's what we did. So she had a job in corporate America. She was making a lion's share of our income. And so we brought her home when our first little girl was born. And then it was kind of up to me to earn a living, which was fine. We agreed to this. I got on with UPS, not what I went to college for. But you know what? I became a driver at UPS, and they were going to throw pretty good money at me to sling boxes around. I mean, gently place boxes on people's front door steps. So anyway, it made it so that we had to build it as a team. And it was actually really good for our marriage, because in that time, especially when I was at UPS and she's homeschooling the kids, we had to lean on each other, and we were truly in it together. And I believe that it really strengthened our marriage, right? And so I was grateful to have her. But as far as just having a full-time job, you have to build a team.
Yes.
You can't do it by yourself. And I think that was probably, so whether you have a spouse or you don't have a spouse, or a spouse that's on board or not on, she's not on board, or he, there has to be a team around you. You have to have people that are willing that you can lock arms with, that you can build this thing with. And I think that's really key, because there's only so much of you to go around.
And Kurt was really strategic with his schedule. We, early on, we had an attitude of, we'll just do whatever it takes. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that was really the vision that you cast, was whatever it takes. He wanted to be home to co-homeschool with us.
Yeah, so we had a vision for being together. That's what we wanted. And being at UPS for me, I didn't mind the work, which is funny because obviously I didn't go to school, college to be a UPS driver. Now, there's anything wrong with it, right? I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed the pace. I've always been kind of blue collar my whole life. But for me, it was just like I was wearing somebody else's shoes. It just didn't fit what I wanted for my life. And at the time, we couldn't see any way out of that job. It was the golden handcuffs. They were going to pay me well to do this, and insurance was paid for. We'd had kids and owed nothing at the birth, for our babies being born. I mean, dental work was paid for. I mean, this stuff that we pay for out of pocket now. Back then it was a big deal. What about insurance? Isn't that and it is a big deal. They say that's the first question we ask is, what about insurance?
Yep.
And so the starting point for all of that is really being willing to do whatever it takes. I mean, for us to know financially, which I know is the second part of your question, how did we make the financial leap? So we set up a 3-budget system, basically, right? The highest being is, our budget is running at an optimal level with extra and abundance and vacation anywhere we want. The bottom one was beans and rice. It was like, we're not going out to eat. There's no vacation this year for the Phillips household, and that's what we did while I was actually making the money and we were investing in real estate, is we scaled down the beans and rice for several months just to practice how we managed.
Yeah.
And we got rid of all debt, which that's a whole nother discussion, right? Some of the decisions to paying off our mortgage that was at a 2.7 interest rate was probably not the best thing. I'd rather have that money back, but we did. So we had no debt. But either way, we scaled down and we're like, okay, this hurts a little bit, but we can do it.
We can do it.
And that gave us the confidence that, maybe we could make this work. Maybe we could leave this. And because our primary again, our primary goal was we wanted to be together. That was our primary force. We didn't need to maintain our lifestyle. So I think that's a very good question that a family needs to ask themselves, or even if it's a single, they need to ask themselves, like, am I really committed to this lifestyle? Because if you are, then you're going to need to
just be honest.
Replace whatever income you need to maintain that lifestyle.
Just be honest.
But if the goal is outside of that, something that's kind of not really the lifestyle, but more of the freedom, more of being able to be independent and manage your time, and then that's a different number. That could be a lot lower and manageable. Because the one thing I will say is, as soon as you get out of your job, for us, we found amazing ways to make money, and our income went up. Now, it took some time.
But a lot faster than
a lot faster
had anticipated. So
does that answer your question? And you asked a couple there.
No, yeah, I know. And I have this bad habit of loading my questions to the brim because I want to maximize.
It's good.
And you did a terrific job of answering that. So thank you there. You hit on it so early on in the question that I originally asked, but I want to kind of circle back to it because I think it's something that, I haven't really reiterated enough to the listeners on here. And that is that real estate is such a team sport. And you highlighted just there that, it took a team in order to get you to where you wanted to go. So talk about, okay, so you had that vision, you had a litmus test of a few properties that you had under your belt, but what did you need to get put in place in order for you guys to scale to the level that you're in now?
That's an amazing question.
You want to answer that?
Sure, but I'm going to pass it back to you for the portfolio stuff. So we had to get our life in order and simplify. We really, you can Google it. We ended up giving 2/3 of everything away to charity, 560 bags donated to charity right before we scaled. And I actually was recruited to write a book on minimalism about that journey because it was such a crazy time. And we still are minimalist in that respect. We live in 1,400 square feet. Like, we had to simplify in order to be able to scale and expand. And we had to, like we said before, start practicing living ahead. But there were a couple key business things. So that's the personal side. So I'm going to pass it to you for the business things that allowed us to scale quickly.
Yeah. And it's also important to note that this is our story. Like, we're not saying that for whoever wants to be out of their job, that they should do it like this. For us, it fit our personalities. It fit what we wanted. And even now we live a very simple lifestyle, but we're able to do some amazing things. So we focus more on experiences than stuff. But as far as building our team, it's really just surrounding yourself. One is it's who you surround yourself with. So what's the mindset of the people that you're around? So who are we associating with? So for me, I had to really adjust who I was associating with and who I was hanging around. I had some really close friends that were UPS drivers, and they're still close friends, but their mindset wasn't entrepreneurship. It wasn't being financially free and being to a place to you can live out these dreams that we had, right? They were content with complaining about their job and staying there. And they're still there, and they're still great friends. But I realized that those aren't the people that are going to get me to the next level because they're not there themselves. And so part of the team was surrounding ourselves with people who were thinking bigger, who were going after big things, who weren't necessarily in our original sphere. And so that's the first part of the team that sometimes I think can be overlooked, is just who we were associating with. We had to change a lot of
our friends. Yeah.
A lot of our friends. I don't mean we discarded our own friends or nothing like that, right? But we did. We had to change our association. We had to be very intentional. And very intentional with our time in that respect. But then it's all the things that you would expect. We had to find a CPA that we could trust. We had to find an attorney that we could trust. We had to find a contractor, and then another contractor, and then another contractor,
And
so
that's a good point. Like, it's just how we scaled, though, we grew into it. And from our coach, we learned private money and finding off-market deals. And so that's a specialty of what we teach. And we teach how to find the right kind of CPA, the right attorney, the right dream team. That's the things that we do with our coaching is because it's a process, but also raising private money.
Well, that's true. That would be a big part of our team.
Number one.
But yeah, I'm thinking early on that we didn't even know what private money was when we started.
Yeah. So that was a huge part of it as well.
So maybe dive into that, because private money is such an important role in scaling your real estate investment portfolio. So talk about how you first learned about private money, how you went about raising it, and then deploying it in a way that benefited you. Maybe just an example.
Yeah, our coach really taught us how to do it. We had heard about it in conferences, like most of us do, but it seemed so big and lofty. And I'm like, what about the paperwork, right? That was my big, what about the paperwork? Like, and so our coach walked us through what paperwork we needed and taught us how to reach out to potential lenders. Now we used actually real estate investors in the beginning because it was kind of the low hanging fruit. Like they understood what investment was. They understood how to lend it. They didn't necessarily know what private money was, but they understood how to invest money and get a return. And so those were some of our first investors. And what was the second part of the question?
Well, I wanted to tell them about a specific acquisition. So what happened was when we really saw exponential growth, and this was relatively early on, I think we had 8 doors. And we walked out of a closing, and it was, we didn't know the seller had ended up being a mutual friend from high school. And we're walking out of this acquisition, and the seller leans over and says, "Hey, that was fun. You want to buy a few more?" And I'm panicking like the butterflies. And I forget what you said to him.
I just said, sure. Sure. I had no idea how we're going to do it. No clue, right?
Okay. So he ends up wanting to sell us the entire portfolio. Well, the problem is we have 6 kids. We don't have any W-2 jobs. We have a high 825 credit score, and we have reserves. So when Kurt left UPS, I think we left this part out. I should probably throw this in there. When he decided to leave UPS, I was actually expecting baby number 6 at that point, and we lost our health insurance entirely. So we paid for his birth out of pocket, and thankfully everything was fine. But we learned very quickly that lenders told us to our face, "You have too many children. You could not possibly live on what you say you live on." And said they wouldn't even talk to us. So our only option, when he said yes, I knew we had no bank options at that moment. So you want to pick up the story there?
Yeah. So then it was about having conversations and making some phone calls and learning. Our coach gave us some things to say, right? Okay. When you call them, start with this, or talk, do the, and so I'm the one that raises private money. And so I just got on the phone and started asking people that I thought might be interested. And I got a lot of no's, right? Some of those phone calls were brutal, I have no doubt. But eventually we did find somebody that was willing to lend on it. And that at that time, he was going to lend, it was his first deal ever, but he was trying to, he wanted to build a private money lending business. All right. And so he was a seasoned investor. So he's like, I'll do 12% interest only. And we don't go that high now, but at the time I had no idea how I was going to do this deal. And so we did the deal. 12%.
And the numbers supported it.
And the numbers supported it. I would not buy a negative cash flowing asset just for our model. That doesn't make sense. And in our area, things don't appreciate. Well, lately things appreciate no matter where you live, but typically here and where we live, they don't. But yeah, so we did that deal, and that gave us the confidence then to do the next one and the next one. And I can tell you that for the last 5 years, we've funded virtually every single property with private money.
Yeah. And
virtually everyone.
Some capacity. We've done seller finance, we've done different things, creative structuring.
But that was rocket fuel to our business.
Yes.
Absolute rocket fuel.
Absolutely.
Because we couldn't see how to scale. But as soon as we learned how to implement private money, utilize it, and raise it, it changed everything.
Well, and there is another element to the story as to why we were not bankable. And some people do very well with, traditional lending or hard money lenders. There's multiple ways to fund deals. But for our model, because in our area, we actually buy, typically the majority of what we buy are drug houses. So we buy the worst house on the block and take over the block. And so most lending institutions are not willing to take on that risk. They want to lend on it, then we refinance the BRRRR strategy. So we buy it and then rehab it, refinance it, rent it out. And they like it at the refinance. They don't like it when it's still ugly and the drug dealer's still living there. Like they don't like it in that. Now, we don't recommend everybody starts there, but having that vision came from our own family experience. And do you want to talk about that a little bit? Okay. But we've had, people struggle with addiction in the past, and this was our way of taking back our community, and private lenders wanted to be part of that vision. And financial institution, they don't care, right? I mean, they may try to care, but they don't really care. So that made it a lot easier to be able to fund the projects that we were doing, because we were very upfront about what is it we're trying to accomplish in our city. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. There's a lot of good lessons there. And the thing that I'm thinking about is, in addition to, maybe not being quote unquote bankable, but having a track record at this point from doing deals in the past through conventional methods, perhaps, that has demonstrated, you can say, hey, look, here's what I've done. Here's how I manage these assets. Here's how I fix these things up. So when you're going and talking to these private lenders, you have a track record that they can go and look back, which is a lot of times more important than the credit history, because, credit scores, depending on how high your credit utilization is, it can be 100 points one way or the other. But, it really is a big deal when you have an established portfolio and you show that you're a great operator. And again, you can't do that without taking action like you guys did when you did. I think the biggest hurdle to real estate is always going to be capital, right? I mean, where does someone get the money to fund these deals? And you talked about hopping on the phone with these investors. And so I guess my question there is, one, who did you find? How did you identify people to call? Were they people already in your network? And then what was the general pitch you were giving them?
Wow. So
yeah,
it was interesting.
Yeah. So some of the first, it was referrals. So it started with my coach said, hey, why don't you try and call this guy? I heard he's wanting to lend. And so I did, and I didn't know him at all, no relationship whatsoever. And so this guy was a very seasoned investor, very speaking at conferences, like everybody knows who he was. And here I am, just trying to lock up this little old deal. And I must have been a fish out of water trying to talk to him. I don't even remember what I said, but long story short is at first it was like, I only need 30,000. I know 30,000 may seem like a lot, but then it was, right? This was the deal, was $30,000, right?
It was a small house.
And, but anyway, I needed 30K. And at first he's like, you know what, Kurt, I may do this deal. He's like, let me get back to you. They went by 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. He didn't get back to me. Now I'm sweating. Now I'm like, he's not going to do the deal. So I called him finally and talked to him. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to do the deal. I just don't feel comfortable. You don't have whatever, blah, blah, blah. So that was my first shot down. And that's where it started. And then I called several other people that were, hey, why don't you try this person? Why don't you try that person? And again, my coach was phenomenal because he would throw some names out to me. And eventually,
that introduction.
I did call someone through, I don't remember how.
I think it was through him.
It might have been even through our coach even, and presented it. And I can tell you now, my pitch is not to real estate investors anymore. Yeah. Now it's to connections that we have, friends that we have, relationships that we pre-exist, which is kind of a big deal in SEC. Like you do have to have some kind of connection there. Yeah. But now it's relationships. It's all relationship based. So it's people that I want them to know our vision. They already know me. I want them to know what we're doing before I ever even bring it up. I even want to share with them what private money is, how we utilize it before I even ask them to invest with us.
So with multiple layers, it's not just one conversation.
Right. And it's actually, I word this a lot differently. When I talk to them, it's all about the opportunity for them. So I'm not asking them for money. I am presenting them with an opportunity to get a return on their money. So I'm calling to talk about business. So I've got an opportunity. I'm purchasing a house. I need, it's $110,000. I'm offering to invest $130,000. I can do whatever percent interest rate, would be an interest only. Your payments would look like this. Is that something you'd be interested in?
It's really simple.
But there's already relationship there. So they already know what I'm doing. They already know why I'm doing it. And usually they're asking me, I'm interested. So tell me a little bit about how'd you come across this? And then I can tell them the story, right? But I try not to get into too much of it in the beginning. Like I've done it before where I get all excited and I'm like, I just give them everything that they could ever want or dream of. And they're like, I'm already confused. I don't even know what we're talking about anymore, and I talk myself right out of it. And so now I just try and keep it simple to the point. Is it something you're interested in? Yes, no, I have to think about it. And then if they say, hey, let me think about it, or let me check my accounts or see what I got. I say, cool. Can you let me know in like 48 hours? I mean, I'm not pushing, but if this doesn't fit for your investment, opportunities where you want, I'm going to go to the next person and offer it to them. I said, I'm not pushing you. There's no rush. I just need to know because I only have a limited time before this contract is over. And which is true. And they're always like, absolutely, I'll let you know. And so that way I'm not just hanging on the line for weeks on end, wondering, I wonder if they,
A few brilliant things there about, capital raise. Something I can say, because I also have to raise money for my hard money private lending business. Yeah. One of the things that I've come to learn is, if you go to someone and you need them to close on a loan in 7 days or even 30 days sometimes, like you're going to probably scare them away. I don't know if that's your experience, but, you really, like you said, you have to establish a relationship. They need to know and trust you and understand what it is that you're doing before you approach them. And then in addition to that, when it does come time to present the opportunity, making it so simple that you boiled it down to a yes or no question. These are the things that are important to them. And here it is. Are you interested? And then something brilliant that you did too there is you set some sort of degree of urgency and scarcity to it, which is, hey, this is, I got to close on this thing, relatively soon. So, can you get, basically, like if it's a no, that's okay. I just need to go and raise it from someone else because you're like, someone else will fund this, but you're presenting it to them because it's their opportunity and you'd like to give them that chance. So that psychology, was that taught to you by your coach or was that something that you developed on your own?
It was, this is the answer you're not going to expect, but I was actually in a network marketing company years and years ago, and I learned it there. Yeah, I really did. I learned that and it worked there. But I mean, I've made that mistake of leaving it open-ended so many times, even now that I know that I almost forget because I'm so focused on the relationship. And I'm very much a relationship oriented person. I'm not a task person. And so I'm not just like, I got to get this done, I'm like, I want to preserve the relationship. So sometimes I'm afraid that I'm going to push them and I don't want to push them, but I found that they actually want that. Like they actually want to be led. People want to be led. And so I see it more as me leading them to where the next step. Like they just need to know, what do I do next? If I say yes, what's next? If I say no, what's next? And so that's kind of how I view it, as I'm just leading them.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's terrific advice right there, because you're just making it so simple for them just to move along in the process to where it benefits both parties. And I think that's something that's worth stating is, where are you going to get it? You're offering them an opportunity to get a return secured against an asset where, there's other investment products out there, and you guys, being, from the financial coaching space, you guys understand what's available out there, and that's very competitive to offer what you guys are offering. So just wanted to note that in there as well, that it's not just a one-way street. It's definitely an opportunity for both parties to both profit and diversify their portfolio as well as grow yours. So, we've covered a lot in here, and I think something that would be really helpful for a lot of listeners is to know, okay, you went from just a few doors and, you scaled up your portfolio. What have you done to help optimize it and, make it more efficient so that you can do what it is you're talking about, where yes, you are able to coach clients. Yes, you are able to be present in the life of your 6 children. So what are some things that you have done to optimize your real estate portfolio to achieve those things?
So that's a really great question. And I love it because we've really focused on it. There's 2 things that we do, and staying organized, having an org chart, an organizational chart of who does what. But we really focus on systems and automation. So we self-manage, but we have virtual assistants that help us. And we have on-site contractors. Like, we have a very definitive system of how we train our renters, our marketing, our onboarding. Everything is systematized and as much as automated with a personal touch. That's kind of the balance that we dance around, and we're always fine-tuning it. How do we automate and still maintain trust and a personal connection with either like our contractors or our vendors, our professional team, or our renters, so that we can continue to offer a high level. We are the best at what we do, and we want to keep that level of excellence. And it has to be fast. It has to be easy, is what I always say. So that's what we teach. It is not necessarily easy. The tech is easy. So we use very entry-level technology in unique and innovative ways so that we can do things faster. We can do turns faster. And we're always measuring, we're always fine-tuning, we're always a work in progress and trying to continue to make those automations faster and better. But that is one of the main things that we knew from the beginning, that we didn't want another job. We have a lot of colleagues who spend an amazing amount of time with the property management side. So we don't even call it property management. We call it resident care and unit care. And so we have a resident care coordinator. Her name is Mary. And we have several interns that do different things. We run an internship program. And so if there's somebody starting out and saying, okay, I have 3 doors, I don't have any time, I work full time, I have kids, what do I do? You can still build a team. And there are ways to have a virtual assistant, run an internship. We've done a high school internship for many years. We've done internships with people even older than us. There's ways that you can do it at a low cost and still have the help that you need. So that's one of the things that really helped us early on, is to build with intention that we wanted to be, obviously we're on site, we live locally, but we wanted to be able to travel. So we built our business and our technology to be able to remote manage things. So from day one, that was the vision, that we were not going to have the traditional property management model, that we wanted something that was remote, virtual, and as automated as possible, but still providing that high level of trust.
Yeah, I think that's a balance that so many people strive for, is figuring out how to provide the highest level of service without being the person that's, doing all of the work. And it sounds like you guys have found a system that works for you and allows you to scale and grow, which really is the ultimate sign of, a system that's working, when there is additional capacity to do more of what you're already doing. I want to transition at this point to, we've really, dove deep into your specific story, but you guys are also coaches. And I want to kind of highlight that as well, because I think you guys get to see a lot of problems over and over and over again that investors might be experiencing. So I want to take a moment to allow you guys to kind of talk about your coaching business, who's the ideal fit for what it is you guys are coaching, and then talk about, some of the challenges that you help them work through in that capacity.
Maybe you take that. Okay. Maybe you can take the second part. So the ideal students that we work with are people that are interested in, number one, we're listening. When we talk to people, we're listening for the clues that say, yes, you're the person that aligns with what we can teach you. We want somebody who's teachable, honest, and they're interested in long-term rentals, and they have to have a good reason. And I know I said that before, but we literally will say no if they do not have a driving reason to build real estate. And they have to be able to show us that they bring something to the table. We want to see maybe transferable skills. We want to see that they have action-oriented outlook and mindset on life, and that they want to build a portfolio that is integrity filled. If somebody comes to us, and we've had this happen, and they say, we really just want the money, then they're not our student. If they are interested in helping their community and building for their family and creating integrity filled profits, then we can talk. But if it's just a quick buck, we are not that kind of coaches. So that's just, we just really can't even help somebody. We're happy to refer like on that one. But some of the obstacles that we help them overcome, do you want to run down that?
Yeah, one of our, early on, it seemed like a lot of, like 2 or 3 in a row, students had left their jobs before they started investing in real estate. So they're like, okay, I left my job. I've got $20,000 in the bank and I want to invest in real estate. Can you help me?
You should call us 3 months ago.
Call us before you leave your job. And so I remember one in particular who, again, there's some of our dearest friends. We coached them for how many?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
And they did it. They made it. And they were able to build another business to help fund their lifestyle. They raised private money for the first time, funded 2 deals, 5 doors, something like that. Or maybe it's 2 or 3 deals now. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But they were able to actually overcome that. So that was fun. And then we have encountered, I hesitate to even get in some because there's such big stories, because literally when you open up the box of this obstacle, you sometimes spend weeks on that one obstacle and overcoming that. But 10 times out of 10, we're talking about mindset. Like we're talking about, okay, here's how we got into that. Now here's the mindset to get out of it. It's not necessarily like, we do need to find a solution, right? So we'll find a solution, but then we want to explore what got into that mess in the first. How do we do that? How do we go from here? How do we even view that? Because sometimes, you lose 10 grand in a deal or something happens, you lose 10 grand. You're like, oh, I just lost $10,000. Like, what am I going to do? Like, this is horrible. And it is, and it is horrible. But we want to kind of flip that on its ear after the initial shock and say, what can I take from that? Because I'm not stopping here. Like, this isn't the end of the story. This story ends somewhere else. So how can I take that, implement what I've learned, and keep going? And
rewrite the story.
And rewrite it so that it's not the end that you say, well, then they're the one sitting around the dinner table that says, well, you can invest in real estate, but I lost 10 grand in a deal and I'll never do it again,
And we help them avoid losing the money, like what's good practices, some of the obstacles that they overcome. We work with entity formation, tax strategy. We do in-depth insurance review because that's my background and my certification. Kurt does off-market acquisitions, negotiating, seller finance, creative structuring, raising private money, setting up their bookkeeping and automating their onboarding for their renters. We have a renter training program that's in depth with a book. We have an online portal. We do everything we can. And when we have our students, we do either small group or individual. We also help them design their website. We do custom marketing. And so we can do a lot for what they need. We basically say, your family now, anything we have is yours. Documents you need.
That's the key.
You need to review
We're an open book.
We're an open book. Everything we've learned and we do it though in incremental steps. The problem isn't the lack of information, as you all know, online, you can Google anything. The problem is digestible, incremental, and individualized steps. Okay, here's what you need to do next. Just racehorse focus is what we really teach our students. Racehorse focus. Real estate is not linear, but we do try and have it be a linear construct. We go through 5 steps acquire, train, automate, protect, and scale. And we do those a lot of times simultaneously, but that's how we structure our own business, and that's what we teach.
There's so much good information there. And I think, you're going to have a lot of people who want to reach out and talk to you specifically about creating a path forward, because there is so much information out there. There are so many strategies you can pursue, and you've identified the one that, you guys have identified as this is one that you're qualified to coach. And I think that's really key, instead of, a one-stop shop for all things real estate, because it's just a tough task to be that. We're getting towards the end of our hour, and so I want to be conscious of your time. I like to wrap up with just a few questions that can kind of lead to action items for our listeners, and maybe even some for you. What's the best advice you could give someone who's looking to get started investing in real estate?
First is information. Like, we got to learn something, right? So whether it's being on Bigger Pockets or vetting for getting involved in a coaching program or buying a course or something like that, we actually encourage folks to
networking,
get some information. So I would say, if I had to pick one thing, it's go to a meetup. One thing, go to a meetup somewhere, somehow, go to a meetup and meet some investors. So there's a lot of things you can do, and I think I just went through most of them, but I would say that would be the biggest one.
Yeah.
Okay. And so a lot of podcasts, our listeners get so much benefit from listening to you, but what's something that our listeners could come to you for, provide to you, that would be of value?
So we actually have a Facebook group called Profit with Real Estate, and that's probably a great place to get value. We have archived different talks we've done, different resources, and it's a coast to coast as well as a local meetup. So if you happen to be in Central Ohio, come on over. It's the third Wednesday of every month in Lancaster, just south of Columbus, and all the details are in our Facebook group as well. So that's a great resource. That's a great place to learn more about us and to search us and vet us. And it's a great place to meet online. It's quick, it's easy, and it's free. So
she still didn't answer the question of how they can help us, I guess. It's hard to answer that question.
Maybe I'm switching that around.
Wasn't that the question, Grant?
Yeah, that technically is the question, but all that information, I'll make sure it gets in the show notes, certainly, because I think, again, like, I'm going to join your group as soon as this call gets off, because I'm like, I just want to be around you guys. But in addition to that, yeah, like, our listeners, oftentimes they might reach out for like coaching services or things like that. But, what's something that they could provide value to you at this point in your career?
So we love it when our students ask us questions. That gives us so much value, because when people are asking questions, that helps us to understand what they need, market fluctuations, problems. If they bring us obstacles, we love that, because then we can say, okay, we have a person over here. We can make connections and provide resources or introduce them to somebody that can help them. So the biggest thing I feel like that our students give to us is their questions and their obstacles, because then we have the opportunity to kind of have a pulse on what's happening in the marketplace and where people need things and resources.
Honestly, just to piggyback off that, it's hunger. Like, yeah, I just love surrounding myself with people that are hungry. And so, I mean, it's somebody that reaches out and is asking questions, or even is just offering to have a conversation because they're hungry and they have something that they're chasing after. Those are the people I surround myself with. And so what they could do for that, that's it right there.
Be hungry.
I surround myself with those types of people.
Yeah.
Well, terrific, guys. I don't want to take up much more of your time. Is there anything else you want to add to the show before we get out of here?
Well, man, you run a great podcast. I really appreciate being on here. I've listened to several of your podcasts. They're very good. So, Grant, you're doing a great job offering a ton of value to folks. And so I just really appreciate you hitting me up and having the honor to be on here with you.
Yes. Wow. Kurt and Elizabeth, thank you guys so much both for being here. I'll go ahead and wrap this up and get us out of here. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, that's all for this show. If you want to get in touch with Kurt and Elizabeth Phillips, we're going to be posting their contact information in the description of this podcast, the YouTube video, or wherever you're watching this or listening. If you've listened all the way through to the end, please give this show a raving review so we can continue to educate and inspire other investors to build wealth in real estate. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.